that intro song, that is such a banger. Final Fantasy XIV has some of the best original soundtrack music of like all time, and I just wanted it to play the entire time, but we have to get the video started. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Nomad, as you can tell from my illuminated light in the background with my little neon black mage there. Today, we're going to be making a warrior build in Baldur's Gate 3. Now, warrior is going to be somewhere between a barbarian and a fighter. It's going to have a lot of just intrinsic perks that make it an absolute menace on the front line. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get straight into character creation. Let's get this build started. We're going to break down the entire leveling process, and then we're going to have a gameplay section at the end where we're kind of talk about how to play it and just kind of like more of a ranty section. But let's go ahead and get to the character creation, the ability score, and what you're supposed to be doing there. And here we are in character creator, the beginning here. And here we are at level 1. And oh yeah, real quick. I made a cantrips kind of ranking tier list video. Dude, you guys are freaking awesome. Thank you for just like engaging with that. Everybody was very polite, very kind, and you actually like watched it and stuff. So thank you for that. You know, this is a mostly a Baldur's Gate 3 channel in general. So it's just fun that I can branch out and kind of do other things about the game as well, other than build. So it's a nice, I would say refreshing thing to do. But anyways, here we are at level 1. So the class we're going with is the Barbarian. And barbarians in general, they're very strong just intrinsically with a lot of their just like basic things that they get along the way. Like they will get some things that are like a lesser alert all on their own without having to pick a feat. So barbarians are very good. Now the ability score, this is kind of the spread you want here. 17 strength, dexterity. Like I said earlier, we're going to get basically a lesser alert that's going to help out our initiative. So I don't think dexterity is as important. Constitution 16, and then there's a lot of checks for wisdom in this game as far as in combat, so 14 wisdom is actually really good to have. So that's level 1. Let's go ahead and move on to level 2 and just the rest of the leveling process. So level 2 as a barbarian, we do get danger sense, so advantage on dexterity saving throws, traps, spells, services. This is just good to have, but the real nice thing here is reckless attack. Now you don't have to use this on your skill bar. This could be set to a reaction. So if you are going to say have a bad roll, you can actually just toggle this, or you have the choice to use this, which will give you advantage, which is just you roll 2 dice instead of just the 1 to make sure you hit your target. So just intrinsically, again, just really strong, especially in the early game when hit chances for martial characters is you're very limited on how you can kind of like bump that up outside of like bless. But let's go ahead and move on to level 3. This will kind of be a very quick video because there's not a lot of choices. I mean, there's choices on how you play it, but as far as like in the leveling process, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, and then so level 3 here, we get our subclass. We're gonna go with Berserker. Berserker, they get Frenzy, and so it's a bonus action, and essentially will let you do a bonus action after it on the next turn. It lets you do a bonus action attack. So it's like a built-in just like bonus action attack, something like a Great Weapon Master when you get a kill or a critical, how you then can attack as a bonus action. So barbarians just get that on their own. Now you do have to use a rage charge, but you do get enough of these, and there's a lot of items in the game specifically that synergize with rage, so I'd keep an eye on those. I will list some gear options in the description that I think are pretty good as you're leveling. But again, most of my builds in general, they're just kind of like a skeleton framework. They're going to work with basically no gear, and that's never going to happen unless you're doing some type of silly challenge run. But just know that, yeah, gear is going to make this build even better, and I'll kind of talk about what he's wearing there in the gameplay section. But that's level 3 there. And then so let's go on to level 4. And so the first feat we're going to pick up is Tavern Brawler. This is a fantastic perk because it's going to add our strength modifier. It's basically going to double it to our attack rolls when we use throw a weapon or we're unarmed. Now in this case, we're going to be throwing weapons in the early game, and this is really strong. This will absolutely basically trivialize a lot of the encounters just because how much damage you're going to be doing very early on. Are you going to say hi? Hello. She always comes in the beginning of the video. She like knows I'm talking, and she's like, I need the attention. We'll go on a walk soon, okay? Not right now. All right, and with the puppy still here, yep, that's what we're going to be doing at level 4, and then we can move on to level 5. At level 5, we get our extra attack as a martial class. All of them do at level 5. So this is really good. And then, are you hanging here the entire time? All right, I can actually have a dog to walk, so I'll be right back. And we're back, and everybody's happy. Okay, so level 5, just reiterate real quick. We just got our extra attack, and then we got a faster movement. So we can move on to level 6. And at level 6, we get another rage charge, but our subclass feature here. Mindless Rage. So while frenzied, we can't be charmed and we can't be frightened. If you guys watched one of my previous build videos, I talked about how I had 2 big scares in my latest honor mode run, and it had to do with the frighten effect. Barbarians, intrinsically, boom, can't be frightened, can't be charmed as long as they're frenzied. Again, you should be frenzied for every important encounter. So before we get to level 7, let's just pause for a moment. I just want to explain how strong this build is very early on. So if you take Tavern Brawler, you take a ring of throwing, and then there's a pair of gloves as well. And then there's a returning spear that so when you throw it, it'll come back to you. This build is super strong in the early game. And it's actually strong in every single act. For Act 1, the encounter that I can think of that this is just absolutely, this is one way I deal with the Grimforge encounter. You have this character with a hammer or any other bludgeoning damage weapon. And this basically almost trivializes that entire fight because you can just throw at a minimum of 3 times without haste to take that the Grimforge golem down. Now that's just one way to do it. Again, beautiful thing about Baldur's Gate 3 is the fact that there's 100 different ways to essentially beat every encounter. That's just how I like to beat that one essentially. So this build is very strong in the early game, and it stays at almost like same strength level throughout the game. So let's move on to level 7, and then I can kind of talk about some other encounters where again this is a very strong build. So at level 7 here we get Feral Instinct, and this is what I was talking about where they basically get a little mini alert where we get +3 to our bonus initiative, and then we can't be surprised. Alert gives you +5 to your initiative, so it's obviously a little bit better, but this is plenty good all on its own. And so moving on to level 8, we're just going to take one more level into Barbarian here, and that's just to get another feed point. Now we do have a few options here. If you're going to be stacking a bunch of the, I would say, story ability modifiers to strength, then you don't need to take ability improvement. I think say 18 strength here plus all the elixirs you get. I think this is perfectly fine. So some options you have here, obviously Great Weapon Master. Now Great Weapon Master isn't, I would say, as good with this build because we're already doing a lot of throwing damage. But if you do want that melee option to actually just get in there and just hit with your melee weapon, obviously, then I would take Great Weapon Master. But if you're going to stay more towards the throwing, then yeah, ability improvement and then bumping up strength. If you're not going to be again using the elixirs or using those story bonus stat points, then I would put it into strength. Other than that, you really have free reign as far as what you want to put your feet into. There's a lot of flexibility with this build. Me, I'm just gonna pump it into strength for the gameplay section here, and then we can move on to level 9. Level 9, we're actually going to go ahead and swap off Barbarian and go into Fighter. Fighting style we're going to go with, you could go with Defense, you can also go with Great Weapon Master, this is perfectly good as well. So for this video, I'm going to go with Defense because as a Barbarian, if we wear heavy armor, it'll impede our Frenzy ability, so that kind of defeats the whole purpose. So I'm just going to go with Defense. And the rest of the way through, we're just going to stick with Fighter all the way. We do get our subclass here. I would say there's 2 choices. You could go with Battle Master. You also go with Champion. Eldritch Knight also isn't a bad choice because of Weapon Bond. So whenever you do, you can bind your weapon to yourself, and then when you throw it, it'll return to you. This synergizes really well with this kind of throwing build that we're putting together here. But I will say there are enough weapons in this game that do return to you on their own that I don't think this is absolutely necessary. But if you aren't going to be searching for those specific weapons, then I'd go with Eldritch Knight. Champion can be kind of good here because of that, -1 or the reduced critical dice roll that you need. So, but Champion's just kind of so boring. And then always the GOAT is Battle Master. And then the maneuvers I would go for is, of course, Repose, Trip Attack, Menacing Attack. These are all just really strong in general, and you do get, 4 superiority die to play with, so that's really good. So I'm just going to pick Champions, just make it easy. And let's go ahead and move on to our last level here, level 12. We're just going to stick with Fighter just so we get, again, another feat. And for our last feat here, you have so many options. There's nothing really you can go wrong with. I mean, we already have Tavern Brawler, and we already put an ability improvement to bump our strength up to 20. So really everything else is kind of up to you. You could take Lucky, you could really stack your initiative with Alert here. This would be a +8 to initiative, so you'd be going first all the time. It's essentially guaranteed. If you want to jump really far, yeah, you have Athlete here. There's a lot of things you can play with. For this video, I think I'm just going to go with Lucky. This is just kind of if you have nothing else to pick, it's a really good feat. So we're going to go with that, and that'll complete the leveling process. So now let's move on to the gameplay section. And for the gameplay section here, we'll just really quickly go through the equipment. I have Savarok's helm. This is just to make sure that we already can't be frightened. So this is just double stacking it. Really what we want that we're using this for is the -1 for critical hits. And then we just have this cloak. It's from Act 2. And then for our chest piece, there's a lot of equipment in this game that actually like synergizes with Rage. This essentially will just generate Wrath, and Wrath will just give us +1 to our damage with melee weapons. I don't know if this will actually work with throwing the weapon, but on top of that, it also has +2 to Constitution, so we are bumped up to 18 for that. These gloves plus the throwing ring here give us so much goddamn damage with throwing weapons. And we're going to be throwing this spear here, which is an Act 3 spear. We're going to be doing a ton of damage. I'll show you in basically the combat log of how much damage that is just stacking on top of our thrown weapon damage. And then the boots here, they just give us long strider. So we are very mobile. We're doing a lot of damage. We also have the Callous Glow Ring here, which will be 2 damage to illuminated targets, which this has a light effect on top of it, so really good. And then this bow here, we're just using as like a little stat bumper here for +1 to initiative rolls. So we should be going first. I already popped an elixir of bloodlust as well because it's not a solo build. Most of my builds, yeah, they're not solo. So you should have a team when you're doing like any combat encounter essentially. But we should be dunking on this combat encounter in general just because of our gear and just how strong this build is just in general. But you can see my skill bar here, very clean, not a lot going on, and it's just a very bread and butter, very basic build, but it's just so damn effective. And I'll talk a little bit at the end about some of the encounters that I'm talking about. I already mentioned the Grimforge, but also the Ketheric fight. This is a really good build for that. We just have some basically enthralled humans that we're gonna just destroy. We're gonna open up with Frenzy. So that's the only thing about barbarians is they take that first turn to kind of really get going, but that turn 2 and then any turn after it, really strong. So always Frenzy first. And then we can just start throwing our weapon, and you're just going to see how much damage this thing's going to do. So we want to throw our main hand weapon here, 95% hit. Awesome. So first roll was a critical miss. This is why we took lucky. Just going to re-roll that. We get a hit. Holy hell. Let's just look at the combat log of how much damage we just did. So we did our piercing damage there. We re-rolled it. So we get a little bit damage from our Radiant Ring, and then Tavern Brawler, that damage gets stacked with our modifier. More Tavern Brawler. Tavern Brawler actually applies twice here with the ring as well. That's a little bit of a bug, but hey, you know, I'm not complaining. And then the spear does thunder damage, a little bit more radiant damage. So this is just so much freaking damage we just did. You can see that was just one throw and boom, almost all their health is gone. So we can go ahead and throw again. You also notice that the rat next to us died as well, because we do a little bit of AoE damage as well with the spear. And so they're dead. That procs our elixir of bloodlust. Go ahead and just keep throwing. I know on the item there, you can see, I'll show you what I've been looking at, is it's grayed out the spear I want to throw, but you just click it anyways and it works. It's a little bit of a UI bug. And we're just still throwing. This is still our first turn, guys. We haven't even used our, got into our enraged throws, and we're just gonna keep throwing. Oh god, it's so strong, so damn strong. And you can just see how much damage is just proccing. Tavern Brawler is kind of bugged, especially with the glow ring that's being applied, what, 3 times? Got one there, one there, one there. Yeah, just a lot of damage, just a full list of damage just from throwing a spear essentially. And also, yep, lucky can proc against people when they attack you. Not a big deal. We're also very tanky as well because we have a lot of constitution. So a very good frontline character here. I mean, and yeah, this will be it essentially. They're not going to stand a chance. And then we'll just hit the last guy, and that's the encounter. That is just a shit ton of damage. So in the beginning, in Act 1, there is a returner ring, or a return pike. That's like the first weapon I would go for. Again, I'll list off the items in the description. And then there's also a hammer in Act 2. So again, I already mentioned the Grimforge fight and how this build is really good against that when you're throwing a hammer that will return to you. And remember, if you don't have something that that hammer that will return to you, pick up any hammer, go into Eldritch Knight just for that weapon bond, and oof, really, really strong. But also in Act 2, later on, in the Ketheric fight, because he has, when he goes into his phase 2, if you're in close proximity to him, you won't be able to heal. So this throwing build, get him up on a perch, again, lots of damage. And then you can already see that you get this trident here very early on in Act 3, and how much goddamn damage it can do. Oof. This is a really strong build. It also works with just going pure fighter, and then you just get that you know, those 3 attacks because of their improved extra attack. So that works too. But this is like the barbarian fighter variant. Call it my warrior. There's plenty of times I actually just go with Great Weapon Master as well. So you have that option to keep throwing, or you can just get into melee and just start swinging away, especially with like something, because you have reckless attack as well. So very strong build. Kind of busted in Act 1. It will just absolutely melt targets. Tavern Brawler is all sorts of busted. But yeah, that's the build. That's the video. I do have one more build in mind before the end of the year, because I will be gone for next week for the holidays. So I have one more build, and then for next week I will have a video already ready. Probably a tier list again, probably level 1 spells, again more relaxed, just to not leave you guys hanging. I don't like a lapse of like 7 days to go on the channel. You know, I want to make sure there's at least one video a week for you guys, because again, Baldur's Gate 3 is awesome. There's a lot to talk about, and I'm really enjoying what we have going on here. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you very much. But later this week I should have another build for you, kind of heavily inspired by a game that has been recently remastered and that I love very dearly. We'll talk more about that then. So until then, I will see you guys then. Peace and take care.